It is such a pleasure to welcome Helen St. Pierre to the show. She and Kathy Callahan wrote Old Dog, New Dog, supporting your aging best friend and welcoming a new one. I think, Helen, I'm in love with you already because not only do you have an old dog sanctuary, but it's called Old Dogs Go to Helen. I just think you must have so many people who do a double take and say, "Excuse me?
Yes. Yeah.
How long?
It
How
makes
long
not I don't have to introduce myself though, because I wear my sweatshirts that say old dogs go to Helen and it's just yeah, this is me.
Oh,
I am
that's
Helen
great.
dogs.
That's so great. You really are doing heavenly work. Okay. Your name might be Helen, but you're doing heavenly work. I've had so many old dog sanctuary directors and founders and runners involved in this show because at one point the Dog Film Festival had an old dog theme.
Yes, I remember that.
Remember that? It's just fantastic that you've taken all of your personal dedication to these oldsters and put it into a book to help
Yes.
the rest of us when this is such a tricky topic. And I discussed it with Kathy, your co-author, who's the puppy expert. But I think most of us correctly should worry more about our old dog when we're trying to change their life and maybe change it dramatically and maybe for the best, but maybe for the absolute worst. If you had to flip a coin, having known so many old dogs and so many who've come to you, maybe because they lost their humans, which is a different issue, what would you say? Get a puppy for an old dog? Please don't get a puppy for an old dog. What would you say?
So I never, when Kathy and I had these conversations before the book, Kathy did her talk on puppies and I did a talk on senior dogs. And the similarities were, we couldn't believe the coincidence and the similarities of what we were both saying, but for different life periods of the dogs. And unfortunately, as you said, Tracie, old dogs are not, and seniorhood in dogs is not discussed enough. And a lot of that comes down to because when we discuss it, we're having to talk about the pain of the potential looming loss that might be coming.
Pain,
I,
of course, Helen, is ours.
yes,
Selfishly, the pain is ours. Any pain
exactly.
that's being had that's actual measurable pain is the dog's, right? So
Exactly.
I just want to say, so often we get very selfish around our old dogs.
Of course.
I just wonder if adding a puppy is part of the selfishness. I interrupted you, so do go on.
No, that's
But
okay. So,
as a
yeah,
dog,
no.
we feel scared, worried, sad, a million negative emotions for us.
So that's where when people ask, should we get a puppy? We have a senior dog. The answer is always, it depends. You
Right.
cannot and shouldn't get a senior dog or senior a puppy for your senior dog. While there are certain scenarios where that is a wonderful fit, I believe very much like you're saying, Tracie, I'm very much on the same page as get another puppy for you during that period of end. So when while one is ending, another is beginning, because I do think that overlap can very much help with the impending loss because there's a little bit of a light still at the end of the tunnel with the puppy that's there while you're dealing with the light that's slowly going out with your other dog. So I think it's a really good thing to do, but it very much depends and it has to be it can't be for the senior dog. It really should be looked at. I'm doing this for me. If it benefits the senior dog, fantastic. But if it doesn't, I have all the things in place to make sure that my senior dog doesn't suffer the consequences of me deciding to bring a puppy home.
And I must say also that I have always, and then I get a puppy and think, why did I not take my own advice? I've always admonished people and told them puppies are actually not fun. They're just work.
Yes.
Baby infants feed and sleep. And there's this myth about puppies. They play hard for 15 minutes and they sleep for 3 hours. I'll tell you, Vizsla puppies play really hard for 3 hours and sleep for 10 minutes maximum. And then they're like, that was refreshing. And meanwhile, just like the mothers of babies, when they turn 1, 2, or whatever age they don't want to nap, depending on the individual baby, they're like, I didn't even have time to pee. So that's what happens with puppies. What about old dog, new dog? It doesn't have to be a puppy, does it? Because there's
No.
so many youngsters or middle-aged or even other senior dogs who would actually be really much nicer for your older dog and much less work for you.
Yes, and I think that's a great point. We do have a whole section of the book about that, of
Yes, you do.
picking a dog that is of the doesn't have to be an infant or in infancy.
Right.
And sometimes that can be a lot easier because you have a much better idea of what is what you get. You're not having to put in the work to mold the puppy to be what you're looking for them to be, even though in some cases you're also still just swimming against the tide of genetics. I think an older dog or an adult dog or even an adolescent can sometimes be a really nice choice. But again, it all depends. There are so many variables that can go into that.
And that's really why your book, Old Dog, New Dog, really is valuable because it has these really nice, concise things to consider. Not like, here's why not to do it, but more like, okay, you're in this, or you've already said yes to the dog you're bringing in. Help. What do we do before the crisis of the old dog goes after the new dog, be it a puppy or an infant, goes after it for self protection, doesn't want to be nipped and played with, doesn't want to be nagged, doesn't want all that puppy energy. And maybe you have a puppy who wasn't properly socialized by his mom and his litter, so he doesn't pick up the lifted lip or the show a little tooth
Right.
and misses even the growl if there is one, which we all applaud dogs who growl before they go, or stopping you so they don't have to go, I should say. And then the little guy gets nailed. Now you have a heartbreaking situation. You think, I've just done the worst thing in the world, and you don't know what to do. And your book has so many practical considerations of how to give them separate spaces, how to give them separate attention, which, by the way, only doubles the work. As a pet parent,
Yes.
is okay. Now I've got two to worry about. How's the dog? How's the older dog's arthritis today? Did they eat? How's their pooping looking? And oh, now there's a puppy to worry about. And where's he doing it? And how's he doing it? It's very complicated, those two ages. I don't know if you think there's any value in comparing it to people who have a new baby when they have a 1.5 or 2 year old versus those who have it with a second baby with a 5 year old. Is there any
Yeah,
way
my two
to
daughters,
understand that?
my two daughters are 7 years apart. So I have a 14-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Wow. Wow.
And in some cases, like talking about there can be some relief on the senior dog, especially if the senior dog is the only dog in the household that the human has revolved around for a long time.
Yes.
As they're getting older, when a puppy or a younger dog comes in, there's definitely cases of relief for that senior dog for them to be like, thank you. I don't have to do all these activities with you anymore. I can just be the old dog on the couch and not need that constant revolving. And I think that's a really important piece of it. And I see that even with my two daughters, where my 14-year-old is, I can go be 14 because mom still has Eve, my daughter, who's 7, who still wants to wear the exact same thing that I'm doing and wants to be with me
Right.
all the time.
Right.
No matter what, whether you have a baby, two babies that are a year and a half apart, or whether they're 5 years or 7 years or 10 years apart, you're still going to be doing double the work. It's just the type of work might shift.
That's interesting.
And I think that's the same thing with dogs, with senior dogs and a puppy, or senior dogs and an adult, or multiple senior dogs, like I see every day.
Have you ever had a dog that came to your sanctuary where the people said, we've made a terrible mistake. We brought in a puppy and our older dog is miserable. Has anyone ever given up an old dog because they humans have made a bad decision that has really undermined the quality of the older dog's life and they don't know what to do?
No, I've never had that. So we have had old dogs surrender to us because they got a puppy and they don't want to care for the senior dogs anymore. Most of
Ooh,
the dogs that are
ouch.
surrendered to us are surrendered because they don't want to either go through the end of life process themselves with with their dog. They don't want to afford or can't afford the medical care. There's been a loss in the home where no one can now care for the senior dog, but we have had many where they've gotten younger dogs and now they would like the a senior dog out.
Ow. I mean, that's just unspeakable. I mean,
Yes, it's difficult.
the people who have a human baby and say, "Yeah, never mind with the dog," no matter what age the dog is, that's
That happens too.
that
We have
happens
two
in
in our sanctuary right now where they had a baby and they didn't want to care for the senior dog anymore.
just on a scale of ethics of 1 to 10. That's heinous. That's just vile. There's just absolutely no excuse for that. If you had a
Yeah.
dog as a practice baby, which some couples do, and now and maybe you never could get pregnant and suddenly are or whatever, or you didn't think you guys wanted to, and now you've decided you and the dog's 8 or something, and you're like, okay, for 8 years our life revolved around this dog, and that's how that dog was living their life, and it was like, we're done with you now, discarded
Yeah.
the Kleenex. That's not what we're talking about. We're
No.
talking about, I talked to Kathy about an older dog I had. And if I'd had your book, Old Dog, New Dog, I would have read the part that you particularly wrote about assess your older dog's physical and mental condition before bringing anything new in their life. You don't say that, but I'll say don't even move the furniture. Not because they're blind, just because they like the routine and the predictability and the fact that nothing's going to leap out at them from, let's say, behind the couch. And I did have an older dog, and you have an interesting point where you say, is that older dog having more trouble getting in and out of the car? And you make this great point, Helen, that I've never seen made before. Don't encourage the dog to jump in the car. If he's
Yeah.
having trouble, it's hard, it's awkward, it hurts. Get the ramp. Start practicing the ramp when your dog is 5. Not
Right.
when they're so compromised that they're scared that they're not going to be able to navigate the ramp. Make the ramp a normal part of their life, whether it's
Right.
a set of steps into or out of the house or into or out of the car. So when you get to that point where the dog is already that physically insecure, we'll call it, and maybe you're doing all the right stuff, which I was doing with Scooby Doo, lots of acupuncture and cold laser and joint supplements and various pain medications. There's still the underlying thing is they're not solid on their pins.
Yeah, age, there is no cure for aging and old age and disease. We can do lots of things to make the process maybe easier, less painful, help our bodies go through that stage, but there is no magic wand fix that's going to make it so that your dog will reverse in time. And that's what a lot of people try to do. And I think that's what I when we talk about in the book, I see so many people say, "Come on, you can do it. Come on, jump up.
Right.
Come on, you can do it," because their dog's done it for 7 years and now the dog can't. And when they encourage them, you're almost saying to them, "I don't want to see your
Discomfort.
decline.
Yeah.
You're going to do this because I can't adjust my own mental capacity that you're getting older." And if you look at it in reverse, it would be the same thing as saying, "I'm not letting you go out of diapers because I want you to be a baby forever and
Or
never
saying to
let."
or saying to grandma, human grandma, oh, come on, don't be a sissy. Just come on, we're going on this hike.
Exactly.
You can do it. Get a stick.
Yeah, exactly. And we do that a lot with our
Yeah.
senior dogs.
And it's interesting because we think we're being supportive, but we're really, cruel is way too strong a word, but we're being insensitive, that's for sure.
Right.
And
Right.
when you say, here's all the things we can do and tools we have at our disposal to make the older dog's life more comfortable and possibly extend it and extend its quality, adding a puppy is not necessarily on that list.
Right.
And yet, here I am with a dog who now she'd always had another dog in the house with her. So Maisie, at a very early age, at 10, had way too many physical disabilities. It was really hard for her to get up, to lie down, those things with weekly acupuncture, weekly cold laser, lots of meds, etc. So now Wanda was alone, and of course, we all worry, oh, the dog's going to be so sad and grieve, and we don't quite know what grieving looks like. So then there's books on how is the dog grieving, and you're staring at the dog. Are you grieving or are you just relaxing? And then after not a very long time, you think so many people's dogs blossom when they become the only dog, when they've been a 2 or 3 dog household. So then you've got the dog seeming really pretty content. So then does adding a puppy throw them into a tailspin, or does it relight their fire? In the case of this situation with Wanda at 10 and the puppy now at 11 months, she never played in her life because the other Weimaraner wasn't a player. She was a hunter. She didn't have the play button. You couldn't push the play button in her. All these two do is wrestle and teeth battle, clack, and gnaw on each other and chase each other and body slam each other. So how do you don't know? That's the point, isn't it, Helen? You could never have known from Wanda's mellow, laid back, I'm just an older wine lady personality, you could never know that a puppy would ring her bell and make her eyes shine.
Yeah, and every dog will give us different responses like that. There are some that I have said they really won't like this, and then they prove me completely wrong. So being prepared for all of those scenarios is really important.
And one of the things in your book is the issue of what it's like in the beginning, day one, two, three.
Yes.
And then a corner can be turned as long as you give them some practical support in that initial introduction phase. So, what would be some of your favorite advices around that topic? The topic
The
of
initial
good
support.
beginning. Yeah, initial support, a good beginning.
Lots and lots of separation and slow introductions. Because if you think about a new roommate, you really want to have a very positive first few experiences before you start sharing a bathroom with them. Like you you want to have, and I equate to dating when nobody wants to be dating in today's world. If in dating or making a new relationship or a friendship, you want to be able to say, I had a really good time. Let's do this again. When you bring dog, a new puppy home with an adult dog, it's very much the same thing. It's have a short, positive introduction, very short, sweet, and then let them go do their own thing again, where both of them goes, huh, okay, that really wasn't that bad, especially the senior dog.
Right.
And but you know what it's like is if you're on a friendship date or you're dating, it's all it takes at the very end of the date is for someone to say one thing that
Yes,
makes you go,
you're so right.
I never want to see you again.
Yeah.
And I think that we allow that to often happen sometimes between dog introductions where we just let it go a little too long and the
Interesting.
puppy will get too amped up and nip at the senior dog's ear or something. And the senior dog will be like, no, thank you.
What are you thinking, people?
Yes, exactly. Get it away. And now I don't want to see it for at least another few weeks.
Yeah. So so that's really, I think one of the, you should definitely have a baby gate or a dog gate manufacturer
Yes.
be the sponsor of your book because you are such
Yes.
a big advocate. Talk about that idea of boundaries. When you're talking about human relationships, I'm going to make a boundary. Let's be friends and never discuss politics because we're never going, that's never going to work. Even if we're both theoretically the same color politically, we should not go there. So the same thing with the dogs. They need a boundary, but it's a physical one. So talk about the use of gates and that separation.
So you want me to say what I would say for gates?
Yeah, yeah. What I mean, because you bring them up and you bring up different kinds of gates in the book.
Yes. There's all kinds. Kathy has such a great description of the puppy apartments, right? And how
Yes.
to create the puppy apartment. And I'm a big advocate for what we would call the senior dog space, which can be like a dining room gated off that becomes this is where your food, your water, your pee pad, all of that stuff is within access to you. And we can do the same thing for puppies. And I think what's really nice is knowing your dog and what works best. There are some dogs that are happy with a baby gated off room, just a room with actual physical walls and a baby gate. But then there are also dogs that don't want to feel completely segregated. So you
Yes.
need to get one of those gates that literally mounts to the corner of the wall and they
Yeah.
can have a whole corner of a room and feel like they're included and not completely segregated. And I think that's the same with puppies as well. There are some puppies that are like, no, I'm completely fine. I'll be in here. You guys are out there. I just need a little area to see you. And then there are certain puppies, and again, it's very much personality and sometimes breed related, where they want to be in the thick of things.
Totally.
And there's so many options now, Tracie, compared to even 10, 15 years ago, there were no options to be able to do this well. We had one gate. It was those compression baby gates, and
Yes.
that's
Yes.
all
For
you
human
have.
babies. Yeah.
And it was terrible when the open concept architecture became a big
Right.
thing
The
because there was
spaces
nowhere to
are
put
too
baby
big.
gates
No
anymore.
doorways. Yeah.
So now we have these really great wall mounted, large scale gates that can divide rooms, that can go in a corner of a space, that there really is no reason that we can't make these kinds of situations work. And that's what's so important about this book is if you want to do it and you want to get a puppy, we can help you and we can make it work with all these different variables around it.
Yeah, and that's what I meant by a lot of gates mentioned in the book because
Yes.
I didn't know that there were these mole mounted. I still have the freestanding, nice looking ones from Orvis that are wood and carved. And
Yes.
luckily, the doorways are the right size to just prop it there. But the minute the puppy figures out that's a nice jumping obstacle. I'll start practicing for agility now. They're really
Yep.
useless if unless you have something really tiny or really shy. A dog
Yes.
isn't interested in crashing through it or jumping over it. So, what about the waiting until your older dog has died? Get a
And
puppy.
then bringing a puppy home after that?
Yeah.
It's a great question. And again, it depends, but here are the only concerns I have about that potentially in those scenarios. The first one is depending on how the death of your senior dog or last dog went, you may be dealing with different levels of grief. The reality, the research that we have has shown that people that experience euthanasia that goes in a positive way. So that's why I talk so much in the book about
You have a
choosing
whole chapter.
euthanasia,
Yeah.
making that choice, being there for them at the end. The research shows that if they have a good euthanasia process and a good death experience with their other animal, they're going to choose it again for the next animal. They will heal a lot better from that versus when we deal with a lot of complex grief. And complex grief is where maybe you wait a little too long, the
Yeah.
dog suffers an emergency, you have to rush them in, you don't get to give them the ideal death or ending, you don't get to be, they're not as cognizant that you're there, or they pass on the way to the vet, or things like that. Both of those scenarios, whether it's a good death or a catastrophic death that might start showing some PTSD signs for some people, which is what
Right.
complex grief is, will
Yes.
affect how you bring in a dog next, because grief is something that lasts and lasts. There is no specific treatment plan that is step by step that you follow to a T and
Right.
you'll be fine. It's very subjective. So bringing a puppy in after the fact can be a really good thing for many people. But for other people, they might do it, and that might be the more of the cases where they say, I made a huge mistake. I was not ready to love a puppy yet. I
Right.
can't do this right now.
And then they're full of a different kind of emotional content.
Yes.
It's interesting. I think that your chapter on euthanasia, why it's old dog, new dog, euthanasia has to be part of the conversation. Live with that all the time, giving these dogs that are in your sanctuary the best possible life you can and the best possible death you can. And I think pet euthanasia is one of the few places in our Western culture where we're beginning to feel a little comfortable talking about death because we can't do it well about people at all.
Oh no, we are terrible about it with people. And then there's still a lot of stickiness in the euthanasia and end of life piece to our animals, especially when it comes down to not just, and we have a hospice sanctuary of other animals as well, especially when it comes to horse euthanasia.
Right.
There's a form of euthanasia that we label like end of life euthanasia. Then there's behavioral euthanasia. And then there's a type of euthanasia that we talk about in, especially in livestock, which is a terrible word, but it's important to talk. It's called convenience euthanasia. When you have an animal that is elderly, extremely ill, or frail, or has difficulty, and you're dealing with, I know a very long, hard New England winter is coming, and I
Right.
don't feel comfortable rehoming this animal to somebody and taking on that. I'm going to do a preemptive euthanasia with that animal before they've really started their steep decline. It's not a behavioral euthanasia per se, but it those types of euthanasias are still very sticky to talk about with people.
And have an older dog who is very arthritic and
Yes, oh, 100%.
slipping and sliding already on floors, and you have every single room in the house has throw rugs. Now comes the New England winter, and you
Yes, or
always
the New
think,
England summers.
yeah,
Any extreme
yeah, that's a
um,
great point.
is very difficult for senior animals. And with the livestock that live outside, with the senior horses and the senior goats and pigs that we have, that when it gets 95 degrees and 100% humidity, we will do everything to relieve them of that. But it's really hard on an old
Yeah,
body, and
it
same with senior
is.
dogs. So having those conversations about end of life we're getting there in this culture, but it's still taking quite some time.
Yeah, people that are more into Eastern thinking or meditative or Buddhistic thought processes. It's like part of the circle of life. And we're like, no, don't let it happen. It's been absolutely fantastic reading Old Dog, New Dog, supporting your aging best friend and welcoming a new one. Helen St. Pierre. Old dogs go to Helen, and they are so lucky. And we're so lucky to have this book. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the good that you do.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Tracie.